Now, you mentioned the media there and their complicity in it. Of course, in between those two incidents I've just mentioned, Julian Assange was gagged inside the Ecuadorian embassy, and then a year later dragged out and thrown in Belmarsh after what Nils Meltzer calls the collective persecution of democratic states on him. Now, we talked about our old media there, as I'm calling them now, the old media. Thanks very much, Anna Brees, for that. What do you say of their treatment of Julian Assange? Because for 7 years, it seems to me that they've cheered on the psychological torture and persecution of him, simply because he has created. See, my feeling of this, we've talked about this before, Piers. My feeling of journalism itself is there are four main things that a journalist really must do, a good journalist, and that's first of all be a source of information, or be a source that other people can leak information to that's in the public interest. Then you check it's true, check it's accurate, release it on a platform if it is in the public interest, and then protect your source at all costs. Those are the four, basically, as I see it, the fundamentals of journalism. Nobody in the history has had a better track record of doing those things than WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. They've never been, they've never published anything they've had to retract. Everything has been true. My feeling is that they're going after him because he has perfected the fourth estate. He has taken those four fundamentals of analog journalism and in the digital age moved them flawlessly, and that's why in the 13 years since WikiLeaks inception, in my opinion, we've seen more scoops of global gravitas than the entire media core combined for the previous 50, if you really look at it. What does it say about them that not only are they going along with, let's face it, things that are just not true on behalf of their they're doing public relations for the establishment now. What does it say about them that while they've been doing that, while they've been falling down on the job and indeed, pushing things that are essentially could be war crimes, that at the same time that they've been going along with this victimization and psychological torture and, let's face it, character assassination of Julian Assange?
Well, this has been with the case of Assange. This is clearly, as you suggest, this has been a concerted drive from the establishment and from the mainstream journalists, most of whom are part of the establishment, to deter democracy. To, as you say, Assange and WikiLeaks perfected in a way this notion of transparency of information, holding governments to account. And of course, he was doing that very much with a focus upon accountability regarding Afghanistan and Iraq, accountability for the wars that the West has been promoting, fueling, and instigating. Yeah. Okay. So this was about, WikiLeaks was showing how a government could be held to account for its actions, for as supreme war crimes, arguably, and the reaction from the establishment to that radical democratizing, that accountability, has been to crush it and to crush Julian Assange, and in the most literal way possible.
It's a warning, isn't it? It's a warning to other journalists. Listen, this is what we can do to you if you cause a problem to us.
It's an act of propaganda. It's a propaganda of the deed that you crucified, you sacrifice, you crucified Julian Assange, so to speak, might even lead to his death in jail. Yeah. And that is designed to send a powerful signal to anyone thinking of doing what WikiLeaks did. It is extremely worrying. If anyone's concerned about democracy in the West, if anyone's concerned about freedom of expression and so on, they should be scared out of their wits with what is going on in relation to Julian Assange. These are not the actions of states and establishments who are trying to encourage democracy. They are actions of states and establishments that are trying to suppress democracy, trying to suppress information, and to punish people in a brutal way, as they are to Julian Assange, to try and stop this from going on. It's indicative of the state we're in. We've been in a bad state since 9/11 and the Patriot Act and this mass surveillance. I mean, you arguably have pretty much have an end to proper democracy when everyone can be monitored in the way that they are monitored now. That is bad enough, but now this retaliation against Julian Assange, this is a very dark corner or a very dark phase in Western history. It's a phase of war fighting, aggressive wars in the international system, many questions, as we know, about 9/11, which we'll talk about another time. This is a dark period. We have a real undermining of basic democracy, of institutions hollowed out, such as, whether it's parliamentary democracy or the media or academia, which is supposed to be buttresses against political power. There's been a hollowing out of those institutions. There's been this drive from the establishment to punish people who are speaking the truth, and it's an understatement to say that we're in a crisis of democracy at this point in time. We certainly are. And going back to a point I made earlier on, I think a lot of this is linked to the war fighting. This is because we're in a state of war, effectively, in the foreign policies we've been pursuing. And they're trying to hold on to that, to people who are driving those wars. And this is the result. They're having to suppress democracy even more. And they're having to punish the whistleblowers such as Julian Assange.